Farmers of Reddit. What did your animals do that made you go, how the F did you do that? Submitted by Murplexia. Worked at a stable with 53 horses and 1 donkey. One morning, while feeding, I came across an empty stall that hadn't been empty at 11 p.m. the night before. This stall belonged to a huge Frisian ex-Percheron stallion. The mystery was, the stall door was completely closed and secure, and I was alone, so no one else would have taken him this year. How did this giant horse teleport out of his stall? Well, we had small feed windows that some of the horses had learned to open with their mouths. This wasn't a big deal as we'd just latched them shut with clips. The openings were big enough for them to stick their heads out, but not really their bodies. Lol. His was open, so he actually somehow squeezed through the feed window. Jump maybe? I have no idea to this day how it happened, but it gets better. I had left all the mares outside overnight. My heart sank when I ran to the pasture and found him breeding with all the girls. Like his own harem, he had a sexy fun night. It was a rough day having to parade all the mares past his stall to see if they made it, and then calling their owners to tell them their horses needed plan B. Had a donkey that would open gates for the horses and cows. Then he'd just walk through the fence into a closed pasture. I'd get back from running errands and the place would be a shit show. The horses would be destroying the hay barn and the cows were in the neighbor's hay fields or tearing up the lawn. And the donkey is off on his own like he had nothing to do with it. Edit. Yes, this donkey inspired my username. Grew up with horses. Had this one mare who was too smart. She would shove hay objects under her water spigot and flood the barn if you did not pay enough attention to her. She had 4 locks on her stall because she figured out how to open all of them, including a carabiner clip. On more than one occasion during the night, she would escape her stall, unlock all the other horses' stalls and have a horse party till morning. When there's half a dozen horses in the garden eating the summer vegetables and another half dozen clip-clopping down the road, confusing motorists. I had a goat that would turn the barn lights off and on at night. No clue why he did it, and he always shut them off after turning them on. We weren't sure exactly WHO was working the light switch, but suspected it was him. He was a fairly bright individual. No pun intended. It was confirmed that it was indeed Chevy flipping them on, off when we gifted him to a lady who fell in love with him when visiting the farm. And the lights have not been turned on by anything other than a human since. Largest Muscovy drake. We had broke into the juvenile chicken coop through a door that was way too small for him, and gorged himself on their high-protein feed. He couldn't get back out. Cow on the roof. They climb ladders sometimes but can't get down. A mob of yearlings somehow carried an old tractor cab, no longer attached to the tractor obviously, 1/4 mile across a paddock. It was heavy enough we had to use the loader to put it back again. Also a steer wearing an old tire like a necklace. He could have shaken it off at any time, but he chose not to. Cattle-proofing your yard is harder than it first appears. I saw a barn cat successfully take down and kill a wild turkey. To this day, I still can't believe my own eyes. One of my neighbors called me to let me know she had come home to find one of my young goats, like 5 months old, inside her house down the road. To this day we have no idea how the fuck that happened. No holes in either layer of fencing on my end. No other people in her home who could have brought him in there. She had no pet door and none of her doors was ajar when she got home. She did however have a few open windows on her second story, so we are thinking maybe he climbed a tree next to her house and jumped. But goats usually aren't very graceful or precise creatures, so no clue how honestly. Grew up on a farm. This year we had a ram, of the big curly horns variety. You don't want lambs to be born midwinter when conditions are harsh and feed is short. So you keep the ram away from the ewes except when the timing is right. This ram could smell using heat. On the other side of a very sturdy door made entirely from 2x4 and held by heavy-duty hinges. Dead-bolted. Of course. He spent several days and nights repeatedly headbutting that door, just running at it full tilt every few seconds. One morning we found a broken door, and a very happy ram amongst exhausted ewes who could barely stand on their feet. A literal battering ram. Full-grown Nubian goat, taking about 3/3.5 feet tall at the shoulders. A good 150 to 170 pounds. Squeezed her bitchy fat ass through the 2x2-foot pop door in the chicken coop, for no other reason but to see what was in there. Then proceeded to climb up the 1-foot-wide, 4-feet-long particle board gangplank to the raised roosts and laying boxes when I tried to get the out of the coop through the man door. I still have no idea how a dinky ramp we built from scrap for chickens held her fat ass. She then taught her shorter but fatter daughter how to do it. This was done multiple times until fencing was altered so they couldn't get to the coop at all. They also get poop into places with scary accuracy. Just anything in the goat barn at risk if getting poop on or in it. I grew up on a farm. One year we had goats that were constantly getting out of the pen, which had a 6-foot fence. My dad built it up to 10 feet, and an hour later they were out again. He puts up army netting over the top of the whole enclosure. Looks out the window half an hour later, and a goat is walking along the top of the fence like it's no big deal. My neighbor's llamas would open the gate and visit another neighbor they liked because he gave them apples. My uncle has a Polaroid picture of a cow standing on top of his cattle hauler. No, I don't mean a pickup truck trailer. I mean a full-blown semi-truck cattle hauler. It's looking at the cowboys and the cowboys are looking at it. And nobody knows what the hell is going on. Edit. I'll post it when I get the chance. He keeps it in his rig. And he's currently in Oregon. Still has to go to Illinois, then Florida, New Mexico, Arizona, then back to Oklahoma. Then he's headed home. It'll be 2 weeks before he's done with his loop. Also, he believes phones are for talking on and not playing Game Boy, so he probably won't be able to send it to me. Our cat was a stray that someone dumped, and she hung around our place for a while before we actually took her in. During that time, my grandma had gotten her hip replaced, and her nurses were worried she might trip on the cat while trying to get in the car for physical therapy appointments. So my grandma decided to let one of the nurses take the cat to the Humane Society, which was at least a few miles away, down many busy streets and a highway. 2 days after she took the cat there, I opened the door, and the cat was sitting right on the front stoop, looking peeved off. My grandma let her in, and said, "Okay, she lives here now." We had a few cows and they would always get out and go to my aunt's house. Finally we realized that one of the cows used her one horn to lift the latch on the gate. So we chained the gates closed. Then the bull figured out he could get his head under the chain-linked fence and could just stand up, creating a huge hole in the fence, and letting all the other cows out again. Needless to say, if Angus cows went out, they're getting out. We had several entertaining animals. Nana the calf figured out how to open every door in the barn. She did hundreds of dollars of damage to the saddles by chewing on them to get the salt from the horse's sweat. She later got addicted to the root beer candy in Dad's overalls pocket. That, and the fact we used to wrestle when she was a calf, led to a full-grown Nala greeting my father by sticking her head between his legs and flipping him onto her back in an attempt to get the candy. He normally didn't keep bucket calves, but she was a character and very intelligent. We had a pig that thought it was a horse. Wasn't happy unless she was roaming the pastures with the herd. The neighbor had a dog that could shoot basketballs into the hoop. We got a pup off of him and she was crazy smart. She trained the rest of the cow dogs to follow. We had a goat that would break up bull fights. Bulls fighting is a bad deal because they can break their penises, rendering them worthless. The goat would horn them in the nuts to break it up. He would also bathe in the bull piss, so he didn't smell very good. Not a farmer, but my pet goat once opened my password-locked safe. I don't know how or why. Had chickens for several years growing up. We had built them a coop, a pen, and eventually, a bigger run for them to do their chickeny thing. Everything was fine, until we got this one white chicken that figured out if she jumped on top of the coop, she could then jump out of the fence and run and wander about as she pleases, and then proceeded to somehow teach the other 16 bastards how to do the same thing. Keep in mind I live in a suburban area, so my neighbors are close. Chicken wrangling became a daily chore. The neighbors became acclimated to finding a chicken or two on their front porch. Somehow they always put themselves to bed in their pen though, making a little chicken stack. I loved them, and their eggs tasted hella better than store-bought. But chasing around 17 chickens and yeeting them over a fence taller than me at the time got tiring real fast. And once their numbers dwindled, we just let them do whatever. Whenever one of your goats screams like a 40-year-old man while stuck in their hay feeder. Only have a small hobby farm. Not a farmer, but it's always goats or cows. Man, we took on a rehome goat to join our small mob of 5 Arapawa wethers. He needed to be introduced very slowly, because Arapawas are absolute bastards about the pecking order. We locked him up in a small stall in the goat hut, where the only gap was about 15 centimeters between the roof of the hut and the top of the metal gate. The next morning, the locked gate was still there and the goat was not. Found him joyfully frolicking in the paddock with the others, because goats are contrarians and liquid. My favorite how the fuck moment was definitely at our neighbor's cow. Old mate has been a farmer for 40 plus years, and knows his shit. He raises beef cattle as a side gig, and had selected a few of them for the meatworks. He hadn't had the bull in with any of the girls, so none of them were in calf. And calving season was done anyway. But cows are too smart by half, so one of them decided to drop a calf an hour before the truck showed up to cart everyone off to the abattoir. Having an immaculate conception baby to get out of something you don't want to do is a pretty boss move. Needless to say, she and Junior got to stay home that day.